Welcome back everyone to another NRG, back onto the Atari ST, and here is Double Dragon, a lovely little sampled music here at the beginning. I think lifted straight from the arcade. I'm sure this is a nice sampled music track at the intro. Unfortunately, that's all the music you get with this version of the game. And here's a little interesting tidbit for you. This is the first home port of Double Dragon I ever played as a boy. I played it back in the arcade, released in 1987 by Technos, and a very famous beat 'em up it became. Lots of re-releases and home ports, mostly bad, but a few of them were decent. And this was one of them. This is a pretty decent version, actually. I remember playing this back in the day on my friend's Atari ST, and I was very new to gaming at the time, and I remember playing this and thinking, wow, it's just like the arcade. Of course it isn't. It isn't actually at all. It's a very good home port. It's an enjoyable version of Double Dragon, certainly, but it's not the arcade at all, and it certainly doesn't play exactly like the arcade. It's similar. It certainly hasn't got the sort of fluid of movement. The enemy sprite behaviour is way harder in this than it is on the arcade, for me personally. And the graphics are obviously simpled down a bit. Simpled down, there's my new Novabug phrase there. But at the time, I thought it was amazing. And I tell you what, it's not a bad version, like I said at the beginning. It's a shame there's no music playing on the actual levels themselves. So you've got some pretty sparse sound effects, I guess, thumps and beats and stuff like that. And a lot of the familiar tropes and familiar visuals from the arcade are replicated to some degree, and it's rather nice indeed. It's actually quite comfortable to play. You've got most of the moves there. I want to say all of the moves. You can actually perform the elbow, which is a lot easier than you could do in some of the 8-bit versions. It's very difficult to perform the elbow, but in the Atari ST 16-bit version, you can actually perform the elbow move. It's not nowhere near as useful as the elbow move was in the arcades, where you could essentially get through the arcade entirely by elbowing everyone all the time. The flying kick seems to be a lot more effective though, that's one thing. And you can kick him in the nuts and headbutt, there you go. I do a couple of headbutts there. So the moves are there, which is good. You can all this is performed on the joystick with a single joy button as well. A joy button, there you go, I'm making these up. There you go, there's the lovely little comic arrow there. Just to show you, yeah, it does sort of borrow bits and pieces from the arcade. One thing I've noticed also about this is that a lot of the enemies will sort of like spawn very, very quickly all in at one time, and then you'll end up walking around a bit with nothing much to do. You can obviously scroll on if you fancy, but then more enemies come at you. So that's a bit bizarre. And there's certainly parts of the game where you think there should be an enemy and there's no enemy there. Particularly at the end of level 1, particularly at the end of this level, you feel, not the end of level 1, sorry, the end of level 2, you feel like there should be more going on, but there appears to be not a lot. Let's get the old whip lady and kick her up the bum. That was nice. Shall I pick the whip up? Yeah. Whip action, pretty good whip action there from Jimmy, or Billy. Is it Billy? I think it's Billy in the blue, isn't it? Of course it is. It's Jimmy in the red. I could have got that the wrong way around. I don't know. Let's just call him Billy. Whatever. There you go, she's gone. Pick me whip up. Here he comes, old Bruster Boozer through the wall. Yeah, he looks good. Big old Brutus. He looks good. A Bobby. Is that his name? A Bobby or something like that? I can't remember. Oh, we should call him Brutus when we used to play it back in the arcades. And he's going to beat you up and club you in the head. So Mr. Baseball Bat Dude is there. These two always pair up together. There's a little bit of collision detection problems there, as you can see. I was kicking away and nothing seems to have happened. So that does occasionally happen when there's a lot of overlap on the sprites, I've noticed on the ST version. Not often though. You can get hidden behind a lot of enemies as well. Colours are pretty nice on this. Like I said, they're a little bit sort of pastel-y compared to the original arcade, but I think the colour choices are well done. The drawing of the sprites. I really like the replication of old Brutus here. He looks really good and looks exactly like the arcade version, or very close to it at least. Your hero character, he's a little bit off for me. Looks like he's a bit, sticking his chest out, hips back a bit, going in for a bit of a catwalk kind of thing, more so. Enemies are a little bit more closer to the original. When you get in certain points of this game as well, I've noticed that it's easier than the arcade. It's like early parts are really difficult, and then later parts are easier than you remember them. It's a bit weird like that. It's certainly got its balance a little bit out. But that doesn't take away from the... he just froze in mid-air, didn't he? Oh, he didn't froze in mid-air, he just froze. Come here, son. There you go. Have a bat round your chops. Oh, yeah, he just went through the bat there. You see, that weren't good, was it? Got that. And then here goes old Brutus number 2, the red dude. He used to be red. Is he black now? I can't remember. I know he's red in certain versions. There's so many different... I can't remember. But anyway, he should be materialising now. There's a big cat. Have you noticed that big cat on the dustbin up there? That's a big cat. Too big for me. Thank God you don't have to fight him. Scratch your eyes out. He beat me up, this guy. I'm having trouble with this guy. This guy's really giving me grief. It's got a 2-player mode, of course. You can play 2-player on this, which is fantastic. Can we wake the cat up? Nah, sod it. We won't wake the cat up. Come on. I thought it was going to sneak around the corner there, but let's go. Knife dude is there. That looked a bit glitchy, didn't it? Bit weird. Can I pick the barrel up? And they're not going to pick the barrel. They're just going to follow me around. You see, this happens a lot. They get too close to you and you can't hit them. You should be hitting them. There he is. There's the dude with the big tash and his ripped combats or whatever he's wearing. I tried to pick up. It's easy to jump in this as well. I find in the 8-bit versions, mastering the jump and the flying kick can be a bit tricky and sporadic sometimes. It's a lot easier in the ST version, and it's certainly I'm very familiar with it. Like I say, I used to play this back in the day quite a lot, being the first home version I ever played. I didn't get to play the Amstrad version until way after this, and that was the bad Amstrad version as well. Oh, he came in for the headbutt there and missed. Here they are, they're all ganging up. Let's club them to death. All of them. Line them all up. Boom. Swing, swing. Bang, on the floor. This is kind of enjoyable. This is satisfying when you're doing this kind of stuff. Really satisfying. But yeah, it's an admirable effort, an admirable port of Double Dragon, and probably one of the classic ports, I guess, as well. Of course, the good version of the Amstrad actually lifted the ST graphics and, of course, transposed them onto the Amstrad. And that is very familiar, as you can see, if you ever play the good Amstrad version. You can see where the decent sprites came from. So that is Double Dragon on the Atari ST. It's a good version. It's a good version. Not quite arcade perfect. In fact, not arcade perfect at all. Not from what I remember anyway. But it's got a lot of charm to it. And it's an enjoyable version of the game. Thanks for watching. Novabug out. Hey, Novabug here. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please support the channel by liking and commenting, and of course subscribing if you haven't already done. If you would like to support me further, please consider joining my Bug Army via Patreon. And also don't forget to follow me over at Facebook, Twitter, BitChute and Twitch. And finally, a very special mention to my Bug Army generals Sam M, Sweet Nanook and Craig Harrison. Thank you everyone for supporting me. Novabug out.